The wind howled through the trees outside Jackson Cole's modest farmhouse, rattling the old windows and sending dry leaves skittering across the porch. It was nearing midnight, and the world outside was cloaked in deep silence, save for the occasional creak of wood settling. Jackson stirred in his bed, groggy but alert, a side effect of being a single parent for the last 7 years. Sleep never came easily. His son Noah was sound asleep in the next room, his small frame curled beneath a blanket covered in dinosaur prints. Jackson smiled faintly at the thought of him, then turned on his side, hoping to drift off. But then he heard it. A faint high-pitched sound carried by the wind, so soft it could have been mistaken for a dream. He held his breath and listened again. There it was, crying. Not the wail of an animal or the mechanical squeak of a machine. It was unmistakably the cry of a baby. He bolted upright, his heart thudding. For a moment, he wondered if Noah had left a toy on that made noise, but the sound was too raw, too real. He slipped into a pair of boots, grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and stepped out into the cool night. The flashlight beam cut through the misty darkness as Jackson followed the crying, now clearer, coming from the side of the barn near the tree line. A sense of dread welled up in his chest. The closer he got, the louder the crying grew, echoing in the quiet emptiness of the countryside. And then he saw it. Nestled beside a pile of old boards, barely visible beneath a blanket of leaves, was a cardboard box. Jackson's breath caught in his throat. He rushed over, dropped to his knees, and pulled back the flaps. Inside, wrapped in a thin pink blanket, lay a baby girl, her cheeks red from the cold, her tiny fists waving in the air as her cries pierced the silence. For a few seconds, Jackson froze. His brain struggled to process what he was seeing. A newborn baby, left alone in the dark, on his property. Carefully, he lifted her out, pressing her against his chest to warm her. She quieted for a moment, soothed by the sudden warmth. A small folded paper slipped from the folds of the blanket and fluttered to the ground. Jackson picked it up with shaking fingers. In uneven, rushed handwriting, the note read, "Please take care of her. She has no one else. I had no choice. Her name is Lily." He stood in stunned silence, the baby, Lily, still nestled against him. Jackson had seen heartbreak before. Losing his wife Emily during childbirth had shattered him. Raising Noah alone had tested every ounce of strength he had. But this was something he had never imagined. Inside the house, he turned up the heat and gently laid Lily on a folded towel on the kitchen table. His hands trembled as he dialed 911, explaining the situation as calmly as he could. Emergency services were on their way, the operator assured him. In the meantime, Jackson fetched a soft towel, warmed some milk on the stove, and cleaned off a bottle Noah had long since outgrown. His parenting instincts kicked in, swift and automatic. Though Lily barely drank anything, she eventually dozed off in his arms. 20 minutes later, flashing lights painted the driveway. A paramedic examined Lily while a sheriff deputy took Jackson's statement. They assured him the baby would be taken to the hospital for a full check-up, and that Child Protective Services would open a case. Jackson nodded, but as the paramedic carried Lily out in a small carrier, a strange heaviness settled in his chest. He felt as though something precious was being taken from him. Something he didn't know he needed until now. Noah shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, what was all that noise?" And Jackson knelt beside him and pulled him close. "Something unexpected happened tonight, buddy." And Noah looked up, sleep still in his eyes. Was it a baby? Jackson's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "I heard her crying," Noah said softly. She sounded scared. Jackson smiled faintly, ruffling his son's hair. "Yes, she was. But we helped her." The Noah leaned his head on his dad's shoulder and whispered, "Is she gonna be okay?" Jackson looked out the window, watching the tail lights disappear into the night. "I don't know yet," he replied. "But I hope so." What Jackson didn't know was that Lily's arrival was just the beginning, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. The morning after Lily was taken to the hospital, Jackson couldn't focus on anything. He tried going through the motions, making breakfast for Noah, checking his emails, feeding the chickens. But his mind kept drifting back to the tiny baby who had cried her way into their lives. The house felt strangely quiet, almost incomplete, like it was waiting for something or someone. The image of her little face, flushed from the cold but somehow full of life, clung to his thoughts like a shadow. He didn't know why it affected him so deeply, but it did. That baby had stirred something in him that he hadn't felt since Noah was born. Something raw, protective, and deeply personal. After dropping Noah off at school, Jackson drove straight to the hospital. He didn't have an appointment, but he couldn't stay away. At the nurse's station, he asked hesitantly about the baby who was brought in last night, the one left in a box. The nurse, a kind-eyed woman named Carla, recognized him immediately. "She's doing all right," Carla said with a gentle smile. "A little dehydrated, a little cold, but otherwise perfectly healthy. We've been calling her Baby Jane, but there was a name on the note, wasn't there?" Jackson nodded. "Lily. Her name is Lily." Carla made a small note on her clipboard. "Well, Lily's a fighter. Poor thing must have been out there for hours. You said you found her behind your barn." He nodded again, his eyes drifting toward the nursery window, where rows of bassinets lined the softly lit room. He spotted her almost immediately. Tiny, pink-skinned, wrapped in a hospital-issued blanket, her hands twitching in her sleep. A caseworker from Child Protective Services arrived later that day to begin the process of finding a foster placement. Jackson listened politely, but his heart clenched with every word she spoke about next steps, transitional care, and permanent homes. By the time she finished her speech, Jackson felt something rising in his chest. An urge he hadn't expected, one that scared him in its intensity. "Can I see about fostering her?" he asked, almost surprising himself. "I mean, until everything's figured out." The caseworker raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" "Mr. Cole, fostering a newborn is no small commitment. You're a single father. You already have a young child to care for." "I know," Jackson said quickly, "but I'm not asking to adopt her." "Not yet. I don't think I can let her go. Not after what happened. She was left on my land. That means something to me." The woman paused, studied him for a moment, then finally nodded. "We'll need to do an emergency home assessment, background checks, interviews. It's a process. But if you're serious, I can start the paperwork today." By the time Jackson returned home that evening, his kitchen table was cluttered with documents, folders, and application forms. Noah sat at the table, watching him fill out each page with more patience than usual. "Is Lily coming back?" Noah asked, his voice small and hopeful. Jackson looked up from the paperwork. "Maybe, if everything works out." "I hope she does," Noah said. "She seemed like she needed us." Jackson didn't answer, but he felt the truth in his son's words. Lily did need them. But more than that, he realized they needed her too. 3 days later, Lily came home. Jackson stood at the door with Noah at his side as Carla carried the baby carrier up the steps. The moment she stepped into the house, it was as if something invisible locked into place. Lily whimpered softly as she was unbuckled from the seat, and Jackson instinctively reached for her, lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than he remembered, but still just as warm. That night the house was filled with new sounds, soft baby cries, the rhythmic hum of a bottle warmer, and the rustle of diapers being changed. It was chaotic, exhausting, and nothing like the quiet life Jackson had built for him and Noah. But it felt right. It felt complete. He rocked Lily in the recliner, her tiny form curled against his chest, and whispered, "I don't know who left you, or why they thought this was the best they could do. But you're safe now. I promise." In the doorway, Noah watched silently, then padded over and leaned his head on his dad's arm. "We're a team now, right?" Jackson smiled, eyes misting. "Yeah, buddy. We are." They were no longer just a father and son. They were something bigger now, something unexpected. A family rewritten by the cry of a child left in the dark. The weeks that followed Lily's arrival were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, bottle feedings, and middle of the night lullabies. Jackson had forgotten how demanding newborns could be, and though his body ached from exhaustion, his heart was full. Lily had quickly become part of the household's rhythm. Noah adored her, often sitting beside her bassinet reading picture books aloud, even when she was too young to understand. There was laughter in the house again, a brightness Jackson hadn't felt since Emily's death. But underneath the warmth and joy, there was a question that never left his mind. Where had Lily come from? And why had someone abandoned her behind his barn? At first, Jackson chalked it up to desperation. Perhaps a scared teenage mother, or someone trapped in an impossible situation. But when the second letter showed up, his sense of peace began to unravel. It arrived in the mailbox one rainy afternoon, tucked between a grocery store flyer and the electricity bill. There was no return address, just his name in block letters. Inside, a single piece of paper held a chilling message. "She's not safe with you. Be careful who you trust." Jackson's stomach dropped. He reread the letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Who would send something like this? Was it a sick prank? Or someone connected to Lily's past? He reported the letter to the police, but they offered little help. No fingerprints, no useful leads. The detective assigned to the case promised to keep an eye out, but he could tell they didn't take it seriously. Still, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He began noticing little things. A car parked down the street that stayed longer than seemed normal, unfamiliar footprints in the mud near the edge of his yard, the subtle creak of his back gate swinging open when it should have been latched shut. He tightened security around the house, installed motion lights, and kept Lily close at all times. What had started as a beautiful turn in his life was beginning to feel like the first chapter of a mystery he hadn't signed up for. Concerned, Jackson reached out to an old friend from his Army days. Ben Morales, now a private investigator. They hadn't spoken in years, but when Jackson explained the situation, Ben agreed to look into it. "Send me the note, and anything else you've got," Ben said over the phone. "Give me a couple of days." While waiting, Jackson tried to keep life normal. He baked cookies with Noah, took walks around the property with Lily bundled up in a sling against his chest, and reminded himself that he was doing the right thing. But the tension never left. Even the trees seemed to whisper doubts, the wind brushing through the leaves like a warning. Then Ben called. "I found something," he said without preamble. "You might want to sit down." Jackson braced himself. "Go ahead, the baby. Lily. She's not just a random drop-off. Her mother's name was Maya Langston. She was a missing person, vanished 6 months ago. I found a thread buried in a cold case database. She was last seen fleeing a known safe house used by victims of human trafficking." Jackson felt the blood drain from his face. Ben continued, "There's more. Maya had a history of being moved across state lines, always under different aliases. It looks like she got out, went into hiding when she found out she was pregnant. But someone was looking for her. Dangerous people. The kind that don't like being crossed." Jackson swallowed hard, his hands trembling. "So Lily, she was born while her mother was on the run." "Most likely," Ben confirmed. "And now she's with you, which means whoever was looking for Maya might be looking for her too." The weight of it crashed down on Jackson like a tidal wave. Lily wasn't just an abandoned baby. She was someone's unfinished story, someone's unfinished fight. And now, that fight had landed on his doorstep. "What do I do, Ben?" "Stay alert. I'll keep digging. But whatever you do, protect that little girl like your life depends on it. Because it just might." That night, Jackson stood over Lily's crib, watching her sleep, unaware of the danger swirling around her tiny world. He reached down and gently brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. "I don't care who's out there," he whispered. "You're mine now, and no one's going to take you away." In the quiet that followed, Lily stirred but didn't wake. Outside, the wind picked up again. Only this time, Jackson didn't hear a baby's cry. He heard a warning. The days that followed Ben's revelation passed like a blur. Every creak of the floorboards, every knock at the door, every unknown car driving slowly past the house made Jackson's chest tighten with dread. He kept Lily and Noah close, rarely stepping outside unless absolutely necessary. At night, he'd double, checked the locks, and sat up in the living room with a baseball bat by his side, listening for sounds no one else could hear. He didn't tell Noah the full truth, only that there were people out there who might want to take Lily away. And that wasn't going to happen. Ben kept feeding him scraps of information. More pieces of Maya Langston's past fell into place: her escape from a trafficking ring disguised as a domestic work agency, her attempt to start a new life under a fake name, and eventually, her desperate decision to leave her baby where someone, anyone, might find her and give her a better life. Jackson couldn't help but admire Maya's courage. She had risked everything to save Lily. But now, someone dangerous might still be searching for her, and wouldn't care who they had to go through to get what they wanted. One night, the danger became real. Jackson had just put Lily down in her crib and was about to read Noah his bedtime story when the motion sensor lights outside the back porch flickered on. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Noah to stay quiet, and crept toward the back door with the bat in hand. He peered through the curtains, and for a split second, he saw the silhouette of a man standing near the edge of the yard. The figure didn't move, just stood there watching the house. Then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, he vanished into the dark. The next morning, Jackson packed a bag. He called Ben and said, "We need out. I'm not risking my kids." Ben didn't argue. He connected Jackson with a contact in law enforcement who helped victims of trafficking and their families go into protective custody during active investigations. Within 24 hours, Jackson, Noah, and Lily were moved into a safe house under a temporary alias. It wasn't home. It was a small, government-owned cabin 2 counties over. But it was safe. And for the first time in weeks, Jackson slept soundly, knowing there were patrol cars watching the road. Over the next month, everything changed. Ben's investigation, along with evidence from the authorities, led to a coordinated sting operation against the trafficking ring. Several key members were arrested, including the man believed to be hunting for Maya and Lily. Maya herself was confirmed to have died from exposure shortly after giving birth. Her body had been found near an abandoned rest stop, a few miles from Jackson's property, though no one had identified her until now. The tragedy crushed Jackson, but it also gave him clarity. Maya had gotten as far as she could. She hadn't given up. She had chosen life for her daughter, even if it meant sacrificing her own. With the ring dismantled and the danger behind them, Jackson returned home with Noah and Lily. Their house hadn't changed, but they had. Jackson stood in the doorway, holding Lily on his hip and watching Noah race through the kitchen, as if trying to reclaim every corner of his childhood. For the first time in a long while, Jackson smiled without weight behind it. Weeks turned to months. Jackson's foster license was renewed and upgraded. When the adoption paperwork arrived, he didn't hesitate. He signed every document with tears in his eyes and Lily in his arms. On the day the adoption was finalized, Noah held a handmade sign that read, "Welcome to the family forever, Lily," in crayon letters. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and cast a warm glow across the porch, Jackson sat in his rocking chair with both kids by his side. Noah leaned against him, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, while Lily gurgled softly in his lap. The fear, the chaos, the darkness, they were memories now. Painful, yes, but part of a story that had brought them together. Jackson looked down at Lily, then at Noah, and said, "I thought we were just surviving. But turns out, we were becoming something more. A team," Noah said with a sleepy grin. Jackson chuckled. "More than that, a family. One we never expected, but one we were meant to be." And in that peaceful silence, wrapped in the love of 2 children he hadn't planned for, but would now die for, Jackson realized that sometimes the most shocking discoveries are the ones that show you who you really are and who you're meant to become.